Class is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Kincaid. I'm from Nevada PEP, and Nevada PEP is a parent training and information center. We're a statewide center, and I want to welcome you today to our webinar. So today we are going to talk about helping your child to focus on learning. So great to have you. Nevada PEP's been around for over 24 years, and we are here to support families that have concerns about their child's education, other types of concerns as far as getting access to things in the community. And we are all parents of children with disabilities. All our services are at no charge. And we're just very happy to welcome you to be part of this webinar. We have a volunteer program here at Nevada PEP, and would encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to volunteer at either our Las Vegas or our satellite office in the Reno-Sparks area. Also want to encourage you to visit our website, which is the nvpep.org. Nevada PEP is a nonprofit organization that provides information, services, and training to Nevada families of children with disabilities. We're also part of a network of centers all over the United States that provide trainings and services to families and professionals. Nevada PEP has a Hand in Hand, Together We Can program that recognizes the individuals in the community who have made a difference in the life of a child with a disability. The recognized individual receives a pin and a certificate, and their story is printed in our yearbook. If you'd like to nominate someone, please give our office a call at the 800-216-5188, or again, you can visit our website to make that nomination. Well, let's get started. We're going to be talking about children that struggle with attention, which frankly is a majority of children that go to school, and we're talking about all ages. So I'm hoping that you're going to find some things in our webinar today that are going to be helpful for you as you and other professionals work with your children. So I'm going to stop showing the screen for just a moment while we switch over the slides. Here we go. Let's see if we can make sure that that's showing. Very good. Okay, there's our mission, to increase the opportunities for home and school success and community success for children with disabilities, including those who are at risk or who have serious emotional disturbances, their families, their service providers, through education, encouragement, and empowerment activities. Help your child to focus on learning. In your packet, which you can download, there is a Nietzsche briefing paper that we encourage you to take a look at that gives lots of good information about kids with attention. So attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is actually a diagnosis that describes children who have age-inappropriate levels of inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity as an inability to stay focused. ADHD is generally thought to be a neurobiological disorder. This means that ADHD is simply the way the child functions rather than something the parents or others did to cause the problem. The symptoms of ADHD are assumed to be created by too little of certain chemicals in the brain, and it affects 3 to 5% of school-age children. It's more frequently diagnosed in boys than girls. But ADHD is a condition that requires patience, instruction, and a never give up attitude. Children with ADHD, when families, teachers, and others work as a team to provide a consistent approach to behavioral changes. So whenever you have concerns about your child's performance in school, I just like to always remind you how important it is to talk to your child's teacher or teachers and find out a little more information. And working with the school is so important in order for parents and professionals to kind of problem solve different strategies and ideas they might do in order for that child to be able to sustain more attention and complete assignments. Sometimes we ask the question, why do we even need a diagnosis? And we actually, don't always need a diagnosis, but it does help us understand that it is a medical condition and find effective treatment so children find success in school, at home, and relationships in the community. So treatment could include medication, counseling for the family, behavioral interventions and supports, or a combination of a couple different approaches. The diagnosis also provides parents and professionals with an understanding about the cause of the misbehaviors that might otherwise be seen as just deliberate. Understanding why children do what they do helps parents and professionals develop good interventions to teach new skills. It also helps to illustrate why punishment or negative feedback is not an effective method for treating what is essentially a medical condition. So what causes ADHD? Well, the researchers have many theories about why children have attention difficulties, but the studies often, don't support most of those theories. So we know that it's not from the too much sugar or poor diet, watching too much TV. Those are all things that probably no one should do in excess, but those are not what causes the difficulty with attention. Research indicates that the cause of ADHD is a combination of neurological and biological issues. The child is simply wired differently. Doctors believe that the condition is often inherited from parents who have ADHD. It's not uncommon for more than one child in the family to be diagnosed with that disorder. Children with ADHD are often seen as lazy, disorganized, and unmotivated, or having behavioral problems. Aggressive acting out is common for some youth due to poor impulse control. Not following through with chores or directions at home or school creates frustration for parents and teachers as well as the child. However, these children simply learn differently than others, and parents often need specialized help to cope with the behaviors that do not respond to typical parenting strategies or rewards. Parents must become advocates who can explain their child's behaviors to others in a society that often has little tolerance for misbehavior. The biggest single problem in the lives of many children with ADHD relates to school life. Their enthusiasm for learning shows at the beginning of the school year and often fades by the second or third month of school. In class, their attention may drift from topic to topic, and they don't finish their work. Or they're in such a hurry that they'll write down anything just to be finished, and their work is messy and illegible. Children who are successful in engaging adults and peers spend much of their time receiving positive reinforcement and tend to respond accordingly. But children who don't understand social cues, who are not successful academically, or whose behaviors create isolation from others, often receive only negative reinforcement all or most of each day. It should come as no surprise that children with ADHD are increased risk for school dropout, social problems, chemical or alcohol addictions or abuse, or even depression. A new understanding of how and why the children do what they do has led in many places to school-wide approaches to behavior supports for all children that are positive and affirming. Such an approach can help many children with ADHD maintain appropriate behaviors throughout the school day. For others, the incidence of problem behaviors can be reduced significantly through an approach that is strength-based and positive. So teachers and parents struggle to understand why and how children behave the way they do. Too often when children behave in ways that are different from their peers, families feel very responsible. So one parent may see the behaviors that resemble those of another parent and mistake that the behavior was learned and not part of the child's disability. Too often parents have been blamed for not being firm enough, being too firm, having too little structure, or having too much. Worse, families ultimately begin to blame themselves. So to second guess their parenting, or to find fault with their partner's parenting. But when families feel blamed, we have to remember that the strengths get ignored. And that can lead to the parents' unwillingness to share information, or the families may not want to provide ideas that work at home to teachers and other professionals because they're withdrawing or feeling as though that they're being judged. Some families, though, are relieved to find out their children has ADHD. For some, it provides an explanation to why their children have problems. For others, it removes the guilt and the self-doubt that many parents feel when their child behaves differently than expected. It is important to have frequent, ongoing, positive communication for families and the students. Communication is between the family and the teacher is very important. Just when school appears to be moving along smoothly, a homework assignment turns up missing, books are lost, social or behavioral problems escalate. So the communication takes place only when the problems arise. That can be a serious issue for parents and teachers, and it can result in hurt feelings or the loss of effective teaming. So as early in the school year, it is important to, review the IEP with the school team and to kind of plan on how parents and teachers are going to communicate. Email, texting, all these things are ways that a parent and a teacher can communicate. And to resolve the issue with homework being lost, having the ability to scan or print and somehow email homework directly to the teacher's email address can be another opportunity for kids to learn how to complete assignments and not be worried about the short-term memory issues that students often find themselves in the next day when they forget to turn homework in or they can't find it. So a classroom environment instruction that is uncluttered can help children who are disorganized to focus attention on learning tasks. Children with attention difficulties have trouble sometimes having sustained attention. And so, if the task is repetitive or boring, and so sometimes the more preferred task might be something that have more movement or are more creative, and kids do a lot better. Sometimes children do better in classes like science or music because there's more activity than just looking at a PowerPoint or just listening. Posting the classroom rules where they can easily be seen and reviewed provide visual cues for children with attention about classroom expectations. Posting and maintaining a classroom schedule helps to provide structure and clear expectations. Telling the child with ADHD to try harder serves only to reinforce the child's feelings of incompetence, dislike of school activities. Realistic, the adults have to try harder to make the curriculum more interesting to maintain the interest of children that struggle with attention. I'm going to look at repeating directions. They need to be put in multiple formats. I know with my own daughter has severe attention issues, and often if I really want success in having her complete something, then I'm going to need to give it to her in written format as well as tell her orally what needs to be done. She needs it in both modalities so that she really has serious confirmation that that's what we want done. Children with attention difficulties have difficulty with self-regulation, orienting their behavior toward the future, delaying gratification, and being able to adapt to social situations. Difficulty planning for the future is often shown in the inability to complete lengthy assignments or to remember to study on Thursday for a test on Friday. So breaking work into smaller chunks or sections can improve the student's attention and completion. Too much work at a time is overwhelming and creates resistance. Providing feedback on sections of work as they are completed and grading daily on activities helps keep the student motivated and hopeful. Final grade based on daily achievement is more successful than one grade that hinges on the completion of an activity. Computer use or audio tapes of reading assignments can reinforce or to improve work production and speed, and interactive dialogues in place of silent study are very useful for students who have significant attention problems. Seating the student away from distractions within easy visual access can help teachers know when help is needed. Frequent and brief eye contact can alert a student is off task to get back to work and can reassure an anxious student. Often teachers would come by my daughter's desk and even hand on the desk and help refocus and get kids back on track. So when you use quiet place for grading, allow the test to be read to the student, allow for oral responses, use of the study guide, and divide the test into small sections. Allow extra time or ability to retake tests and to rework missed problems for a better grade. Provide a partial grade based on an individual progress. Mark only the correct answers and grade spelling separately from content. Avoid time tests for most students with ADHD. And be sure that needed accommodations are provided for district-wide, or as we say in Nevada, the SBAC tests. Some students may need multi-sensory presentations to help them understand the lesson. Some are good listeners, but not visual learners. They learn through listening, but not through lecture or general conversation. Children with attention difficulties use many approaches to teaching and learning as possible. It helps to reinforce through repetition. I know I find that music is another way that my daughter would have a tendency to remember important things that we were trying to teach her. Seeing an ADHD student near a peer mentor and encouraging team response to teacher questions can help the unsure to develop appropriate class participation skills. A bonus of extra classroom points for appropriate participation activities can help reinforce positive social skills, encourage cooperative learning techniques for children seeking group or shared work experiences. Checking for the understanding on what's being said or the directions for an assignment by asking the student privately to repeat the directions for a level of understanding instead of drawing unwanted attention to the child with issues that a child that might have low self-esteem. Provide choices for class activities You can either use your time remaining to do your math or to copy next week's assignment into your notebook. Devise a secret signal that the student can use when needing help. A word, a gesture, a cue card works well and does not bring attention to lower self-esteem. Communications that are sent home need to be more frequently positive than negative. So if the child's, paying attention, to having a good day, it's real important that those messages home be that their accomplishments for that day and the ability to stay on task. You can even help the child write or design a positive note and, add some decorative piece to it. Find the activities the student prefers. Knowing what he or she likes can help the teachers to identify and use those strengths in school activities. Call on the child only when he or she knows the answers. Teachers who call on the child when he's certain that he or she knows the answers are focusing attention on the child's skills. One of the challenges that students have is what we call backpack disorder. They often don't know how to purge. They're not paying attention when you as parents are going through the mail and the keep pile and the pile that gets tossed. So they really struggle with that. Messages that are sent between home and school sometimes don't get transmitted. You want to find another way and help that child keep the infrastructure set up in that backpack so that they know where things go and maybe the time to do that, and reinforcements when they do well with that. It's important to explain the learning objectives when students are getting a new lesson. You want to make sure that the handwrite assignments have dates of completion on them. You want to segment the assignment, shorten the tasks when possible. You want to provide an overview of long-term work, introduce one concept at a time, show what the end product looks like, such as a completed worksheet, maybe number the steps in the task, and sequence the tasks in order of importance. You want to avoid cluttered, crowded, upside down, sideways, whatever, worksheets. Teaching students how to mask, in other words, hide part of the worksheet, can help them feel less overwhelmed when they're trying to complete worksheets. Using color coding or highlighting or underlining are another way to emphasize the important information on which the student needs to focus on. Hyperactivity can be very distracting, both for the student and for the teacher. Excess motor movement is a defining characteristic of the student that has attention difficulties. Frequent breaks during heavy academic activities to release energy will be important for some students with attention difficulties. Others may just need more hands-on, stress ball, putty, other things to kind of help with anxiety. So the denial of appropriate sports activities based on the failure to complete academic work is a major problem confronting children with ADHD. No evidence exists to support that such denial actually improves their work performance. And so certainly withholding recess or class breaks is not appropriate for students that struggle with attention. They're just going to do worse if they don't have an opportunity to move a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about what parents can do in particular. You want to pay attention to that good behavior. Children with ADHD need consequences to help them learn to do chores, schoolwork, follow rules, and behave as adults expect. Most of them are not self-motivated. Providing meaningful consequences is important to their learning. To behave well or to remember what parents or teachers expect, parents may often have to provide tangible consequences such as hugs or physical affection or special rewards, treats, toys, or money as a backup to motivate children to complete their work, follow rules, or do chores. Larger rewards that are more desirable to them may be needed as used, or to be used, when it's appropriate. Remember, punishment does not teach new skills. Finding positive ways to teach and then reinforce by noticing a new skill is critical to behavior change. One of the things that parents in general have to practice is noticing. It's commenting. I like the way you're doing this. Nice job. Good listening. All of those things don't always come very naturally, but students with attention difficulties are always checking the relationship temperature and often need that reinforcement on a more regular basis than children that don't have attention difficulties. One of the things we like to remind parents and others as well is that children do learn different things at different times. Some children learn to walk early, others learn to talk early, but probably there isn't a child out there that has all of the skills that they might need at their age level. So skills sometimes come later all kids make progress at different rates. But children with attention difficulties are socially immature compared to their peers and remain so for many years. But these children are capable of learning and do learn with practice. The skills that are picked up automatically by others need to be systemically taught and reinforced. Often children with attention difficulties are very focused on themselves and self-absorbed and may not be necessarily modeling after other students that are actually showing appropriate behavior. So it's important not to compare the development of children with attention difficulties with children who do not have the disability. Their development may be superior in some areas and considerably delayed in others. Patience and repetition are keys to behavior change for children with attention difficulties. For instance, it takes longer for some children to learn to ride a bike than others. But children who have the physical ability to ride a bike eventually do so to learn to ride with adult instruction. So we want to understand consequences. A negative consequence is what happens after the behavior occurs. The likely same behavior will occur again. The negative consequence should decrease the behavior. But negative consequences, or something that's undesirable to the child, is used much more often by adults than positive consequences. Often we just expect children to be good, and we punish them when they're not. Some adults may feel that a negative consequence, punishment, is good medicine for bad behavior. The problem is that punishment doesn't teach the child what to do. When children are punished for bad behaviors and not rewarded for good behaviors, they may become angry or stop the behaviors only when the adults are directly supervising their activities. Schools and parents will use negative consequences without realizing that it is not seen as negative by the child. Suspension is actually a good example. If the child's goal is not to be in school, then suspension can have a very positive consequence. It's important to choose those consequences that have the desired meaning to a child. If we want the child to use positive behaviors, then those behaviors must be taught and consistently reinforced in a positive way until they become a habit. The real problem with punishment is that while it's easy to use and stops the immediate problem, it doesn't teach the child what to do instead. Therefore, it doesn't necessarily reduce the problem behavior. Adults should ask themselves whether the child receives a specific negative consequence is learning what he or she can do instead of using the behavior the adult is trying to correct. So often we talk to children about making good choices. And so we have to always remind ourselves that we're always in that teaching mode so that we can help children make good choices and possibly use, in some instances, more of a stop and think button. Can we get them to stop, think, which would be part of that self-regulation? So misbehavior generally signals the need for instruction. Once again, I want to remind you your handouts can be downloaded. You're welcome to have the PowerPoint that we're using today, as well as a way to kind of look at some of the other excellent pieces of information about kids with attention difficulties. If a student's having problems managing behavior at home and in school, the first question is why? To assist students to learn new behavior skills, we must have enough information on the behaviors in need of improvement, such as where, when, and why they occur, and what the student gets from using the behavior. To help change the problem behavior, a functional behavioral assessment can be requested to pinpoint triggers that cause and help identify new interventions. You want to avoid confrontations in the halls between classes and in class, maybe allowing the student to leave 5 minutes early or late, or to have a predetermined place that they meet. Consequences for non-willful rule violations, and a reward system for remembering pencils and homework instead of punishing. Develop interventions for non-deliberate behaviors, like a foam rubber on a pencil for tapping on the desk, or a large rubber band, their bands, I believe they're called, on the chairs, Velcro piece, the rough piece under the desk, or even some kind of a cushion that helps a child get those wiggles out. It's always helpful to be proactive about helping children learn to manage their behaviors. Teachers and parents can develop, review what to do when the problems arise, and give the power of choice often reduces the severity of a behavioral incident. So one of the highly effective strategies to deal with misbehaviors that are annoying but not harmful and that are intended to gain adult attention is to ignore the attention. So you would let the child know, I'm going to be ignoring if you try to interrupt me, and I'm going to, for example, if I'm on the phone, I'm going to set the timer. So I'm talking to another adult, and I need you to work on your waiting skills while I'm on the phone. When the timer goes off, I'll be off the phone. So it's not as easy as it sounds to ignore these types of behaviors, but sometimes we need to redirect kids. For example, if we're trying to get a kid to maybe do a little bit less talking, perhaps we're using strategies in the car of turning up the music and rocking out, and that's giving everyone a little break from the consistent speaking. So it teaches children that parents will not reward them with attention for negative behaviors. So you have to decide which ones you're going to ignore and be very clear to the child that is not going to get your attention. When parents and other adults provide positive consequences, such as extra time with a parent, some kind of token or stickers, increased allowance or praise, the behaviors will be seen more often if the child likes the consequence. So a positive consequence should increase the behavior that led to the consequence. The child's helpful at home, the parent says something positive, child's most likely going to be helpful again. Parents who teach your children how to set the table, for instance, and say things, I really like the way you're setting the table, or helping the child feel good about practicing a new skill. Negative consequences, such as a withdrawal of affection, denial of privileges, or timeout, when it's used as punishment, stop the child's undesirable behaviors when the consequence is one that the child generally does not want. Sometimes schools and parents will use a negative consequence without realizing it's not seen as a negative by the child. And as I mentioned earlier, suspension is actually a good example of that. So it's important to choose consequences that have a desired meaning to the child. We always want to make sure that we're teaching the child what to do instead. So it's important that children learn the relationship between their behaviors and the consequences that follow, positive and negative. Most children that struggle with attention require much more feedback on a consistent basis on how they're doing than other children. So it is important that you respond quickly to a situation where a child is displaying inappropriate behavior, but it's also important to make sure that you are able to give children that you know need extra hugs and positive reinforcement more spontaneously. So reminders or redirection to change an active behavior should be given in a positive way. So if a child is misbehaving, reminder, say, what are you working for? Or, we don't run. Remember, flat feet in the house. Punishments can include mild but undesirable responses for the child as a timeout or a temporary removal from a preferred activity. Parents should expect that it will take several months of continuous and immediate feedback about positive and negative behaviors to see a change become a habit. Patience is a key feature of behavior change strategies. So because children with ADHD often receive much more criticism and negative feedback than other children, it's critical to avoid an all too common drift toward using punishment first to stop an unwanted behavior. So here's an example on the slide is using those positives first before the negatives. So as you can see, you can play outside if you finish your homework. One of the things that I use with my daughter quite frequently is the when then. When you do this, then we'll do that. So it's contingent on their completing a task and not necessarily that they're receiving negative feedback because they're not doing something that we need. You want to try to be consistent. Consistency means three important things. That the caregivers need to be consistent over time. That means need to react to the behavior today. It's how we have to respond to it tomorrow or any other day in the week or the month. So when we're trying to change behaviors, it's really the adults that change their behavior. We're also trying to get them to be able to do things more consistently and setting up a certain structure level, but we can't give up. It takes sometimes months or years for a child's behavior to become a pattern. But secondly, consistency means responding to the behavior in the same way in different places and settings. So how you respond to it at home, you want to respond to it the same way at Target. And then the third is that everyone should try to manage the behavior in a similar way. This can be difficult if we're asking grandma or auntie or others to help, but we really do want them to try to be on the same page and manage the behavior with the child in a very, very similar way. Because if the adults ignore the behavior completely or they allow the behavior, sometimes that can actually regress the progress that has been made with the child. So important to develop home routines. The best strategies parents can use is to be consistent across environments and to also develop organizational type routines because children with attention difficulties are internally disorganized. That means that they need more structure. They need things to be in the same place all the time. They need to follow the same routines. That actually gives them a sense of feeling more secure and helps with anxiety in some instances. Important to post the house rules. Whatever the rules are in your home, post those rules, go over those rules, talk about that. Kids will be reinforced if they follow those rules. So again, it's not that we're going to punish, we're going to reinforce that we all follow the rules, and adults have to follow the rules. So if a rule in your house is that we don't walk around without clothes in the kitchen, and then the adults have to follow the same rule as well. The other thing is that whatever the adult is that's responsible for the child needs to address the behavior right then. This wait till your father gets home does not work with kids with attention. And that's why it's very difficult sometimes for parents to really do very much of any kind of like correction for kids that have misbehaviors at school, because it's 5 or 6 hours later. So I think it's difficult. It needs to be addressed right then and there, and that's one of the challenges. The parents aren't at school, and so they can't necessarily make any kind of a change, but they certainly can talk about it. It's important to follow school rules and to listen to adults. Caregivers of children with ADHD will sooner or later find themselves faced with difficult, disruptive, or non-compliant behavior. These situations arise at home, in public places, such as stores, restaurants, churches, other homes, and at school. When they occur, parents become embarrassed and frustrated, especially if the behaviors occur in front of others. Yet parents actually pretty much know where their children are going to struggle and more likely to misbehave. So developing a plan prior to entering that environment can be extremely helpful. Setting up the rules regarding shopping. Is it a buy day for the child? Is the child going to be the special helper? Does the child have the list and they're going to check it off? Is it like a treasure hunt that they're going to help find items and help shop with mom? But, being able to change it up a little bit can avoid these difficult situations. Having the child maybe push the shopping cart, be the special helper. Certainly those situations, if the child does well, then the reinforcements need to be there after you leave that environment. So you want to plan for any attention-seeking behaviors. You want to respond only to the positive behaviors and not giving in to the negative. And so you might even use a secret signal. You might reminding a child about his voice level. The incredible 5-point scale is what we often use in teaching about social skills, where we actually help the family assign a number to the child's level of noise. So on the playground or in the park, the child's voice is a 5. In the library or when people are sleeping, the child's voice needs to be a 1. So helping the child remember that maybe in Walmart or Target, your voice can be a 2 or a 3, but your voice can't be a 5. So teaching that ahead of time is a valuable way of helping children moderate and be able to, control their own behaviors, and also helping them understand how their behavior affects others, because often that piece is missing. You always want to think about instructional need. You will lose the battle every time with a very angry child. It's important to recognize that children need to be taught, and that as parents, you're the first teacher, but you're consistently always going to be the child's teacher. We hope as children become young adults that they use their parents as advisors. But the family unit is something that is so valuable, and that children really need to know that their parents are there for them, and that they want them to do better, and they want them to behave well. And using instructional need and in a teaching format takes a lot of that negative personal piece that sometimes can make correction and discipline, a very ugly battlefield. The most important element in behavior support programs for children with attention difficulties is the need to follow through with both positive and negative consequences immediately and without emotion. And as parents, it's hard to do that sometimes. We all have emotional, but in certain instances, parents could easily as well decide that they're going to call themselves a timeout so that they can collect themselves and they can have a calmer demeanor when they're addressing the issue. I think the other thing too is that not everything deserves an answer. So if you're in or starting an angry debate with a emotional child, at some point you would just say, that's my final response, and walk away. Sometimes we need to give kids a little time to process information. So as we conclude, and we will in just a little bit here, we like to remind you not to give up, that you want to always listen. Raising children today means parents need to assume a variety of responsibilities that many of us are simply unprepared for. Juggling these new responsibilities can feel overwhelming unless parents are comfortable with their behavioral support skills and have others to talk to who understand their situations. And as a reminder, Nevada PEP has support groups in our Las Vegas and our Reno Satellites office. So we would encourage you to, meet up with parents once a month and talk about some of the things that are more challenging to you as a parent. We certainly have classes like we are doing today at our centers, and we're happy that you were able to join us in a webinar format, and we hope that it's helpful. And please don't forget to download those handouts. Communication between children and adults is important to a family's stability. By modeling honest communication about feelings, parents can help children learn to express themselves and learn to deal with their feelings and frustrations. By forgiving themselves for their own mistakes, parents also show children that none of us are immune from such errors, and that we can be positive learning experiences. After all, the way one learns to ride a bicycle is often by falling off and then figuring out how to maintain balance. So if you've used strategies, if you've, for example, came from a family that they're all yellers or screamers, you can make those changes. You can think more instructional need and just doing more teaching. So today can just be the beginning of a day where things are going to change at your house, and we would encourage you to think about some of the things that we talked about in the last hour. The 10 things you can do, that's part of one of your handouts. You could print that out, post it in your closet to try to remind yourself of some of these things that are so important. Giving the feedback on behaviors and giving it often helps kids know where they stand. Remember that relationship with your child, especially a child with attention difficulties, is extremely important to the child as well as it is to you. Also, how can you improve in the home routines? Do you have the house rules identified and posted? Are you able to plan for problems? Do you have a waiting item that you have handy, a word search book, or something that a child could do when you get stuck in traffic or in an appointment and the child is struggling with the waiting and behaviors are beginning to emerge? So again, we encourage you to think instructional need, and we hope that these 10 things are going to be helpful as you go forward. Please give our office a call, the 800-216-5188, if you have any questions, if you need to just talk to one of our specialists. We're here to help. Again, as parents of children that have serious attention issues, we understand that it can be very challenging and very overwhelming to be a parent of a child that maybe other adults don't really understand. Thanks again for joining us. The question pane is always open. We're looking for questions. So if you have one, please type one in and we'll stay on a little longer to address that question. And once again, I want to thank you for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and switch the slide over to our thank you slide. And we think that this information is valuable and helpful, and we're always here to have you visit our center or to attend one of our trainings at the center or to join us for another webinar. I encourage you as well to visit our website. If you have any questions, you certainly can type a question to the PEP info at nvpep.org. That's up on the slide. And once again, thanks again for being part of our webinar today. And we hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you. Goodbye.